Hey everyone, this is Peter, and welcome back to the History Shorts podcast. I sometimes do these Today in Context episodes, and thought that this one was fitting in light of today's passing of former Vice President Dick Cheney. My condolences to his family. Today's bonus episode is brought to you by the Podcast Republic, your ultimate podcast app. Subscribe to your favorite shows, including this one, and never miss an episode. Available on Google Play and the Apple App Store. If you were to rank the most powerful figures in American history, the vice presidency probably wouldn't make the top of that list. For most of the nation's past, the office was little more than a constitutional footnote, a political waiting room where ambitious men went to fade, not to rule. John Adams called it the most insignificant office that ever the invention of man contrived. For more than 200 years, that description mostly held true. But that changed in January of 2001, when a quiet, reserved, and deeply experienced Washington insider named Richard Bruce Cheney became the 46th Vice President of the United States. And in doing so, he redefined, maybe permanently, what the vice presidency could be. Some called him the shadow president, others the co-president. Critics accused him of running the White House from behind a curtain. Allies praised him as the indispensable strategist guiding America during its most dangerous post-war decade. One thing is certain, no vice president in U.S. history had ever wielded the kind of influence that Dick Cheney had.
Yesterday, December 7th, 1941.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
To understand Dick Cheney's rise, you have to begin long before the Bush administration. Back in the 1960s, when he was a graduate student at the University of Wisconsin, watching Washington from a distance but already drawn toward it. After a brief brush with academia and private work, Cheney entered government as an intern in 1968, and from there, he never left Washington's orbit. By 1975, after years of quiet behind-the-scenes work, he was appointed White House Chief of Staff under President Gerald Ford. He was just 34 years old. In that role, he learned the machinery of executive authority, who controlled access, how information flowed, and how policy was shaped out of public view. Cheney wasn't charismatic by any means, but he was respected for discipline, loyalty, efficiency, and for never needing the spotlight. After leaving the Ford administration, Cheney was elected to Congress, serving Wyoming for a decade. He rose to House Minority Whip. Later, he headed the Pentagon under President George H.W. Bush, where he oversaw Operation Desert Storm and the First Gulf War. By the time he returned to private life in the late 1990s as CEO of Halliburton, Cheney had spent more than 25 years studying, shaping, and navigating the most powerful institution on earth, the U.S. government. So when George W. Bush won the Republican nomination in 2000 and asked Cheney to lead the search for a running mate, the selection process seemed routine, until Bush chose Cheney himself. It was a moment almost without precedent. The search committee chairman becoming the nominee. And just like that, Cheney returned to elected politics, this time with a quiet goal, not to be a ceremonial second in command, but a political partner with influence. Before Cheney even took the oath, he began altering the structure of the vice presidency. Instead of waiting for assignments, he built his own. He placed loyalists throughout the federal bureaucracy, defense, state, CIA, justice, energy, agencies that controlled intelligence, war-making, secrecy, and oil policy. His staff was larger than any vice presidents in history. His access to classified briefings surpassed that of nearly the entire cabinet. And unlike most vice presidents, he had a standing weekly lunch with the president, not occasionally, but by design. Then everything changed on September 11th, 2001. When hijacked planes struck New York and Washington, Cheney, not Bush, became the center of command in the first critical hours. While the president was airborne aboard Air Force One, Cheney was in the underground bunker beneath the White House, issuing orders, coordinating intelligence, and making real-time decisions about military escalation and the use of deadly force against further threats. It was in those moments that Cheney's influence hardened into something unheard of for a vice president: actual operational authority. Over the next 4 years, Cheney helped shape and in some cases originate the most controversial policies of the post-9/11 era. His office played a central role in the legal justifications for the invasion of Iraq, the use of enhanced interrogation techniques, the creation of military tribunals, warrantless surveillance programs, and the expansion of presidential war powers under what became known as the unitary executive theory. Cheney didn't support these developments. He had spent decades preparing for them. Back in the 1980s, as a congressman still, he had opposed restrictions on the presidency after Watergate, arguing that national security required broad executive capabilities. After 9/11, he saw his moment to restore the powers he believed had been dangerously weakened. His influence wasn't loud. It was quite structured. Cheney did not debate on television or seek any applause. Instead, he placed his allies in crucial positions. David Addington as legal architect, Scooter Libby as chief of staff, Donald Rumsfeld at the Pentagon, and others at the Justice Department, drafting memos on detainee rights and interrogation limits. These men formed what some insiders called Cheney's government within the government. While Bush delivered speeches, Cheney shaped frameworks. While cabinet members argued policy, Cheney inserted legal authority. And while the public debated the war, Cheney moved through secure meeting rooms where policy was already being executed. By 2004, insiders no longer questioned whether Cheney was the most powerful vice president in history. The debate was whether he had more power than many presidents before him. The Iraqi war dragged on with no weapons of mass destruction ever found. Revelations about CIA black sites provoked global outrage. The Supreme Court struck down parts of the administration's military tribunal system, and congressional investigations began probing the secrecy and legal maneuvering of Cheney's office. Even conservatives who once praised him began distancing themselves. By the final years of the Bush presidency, Cheney's influence had begun to decline. Not because his beliefs had changed, but because the political landscape around him had. Bush increasingly sought legacy outside of war. Public opinion demanded transparency, and younger administration figures like Condoleezza Rice and Robert Gates pushed for diplomatic recalibration. Still, even diminished, Cheney remained unlike any vice president before him. He never apologized for his positions. He never suggested regret for Iraq. He said publicly years later that he would do it all again. And that certainty, more than anything else, explains his power. Dick Cheney was not a politician who rose by public approval. He was a strategist who rose by institutional mastery. He understood that influence isn't earned in elections or press conferences, but really in memos, staffing, legal authority, and control of information. In his view, leadership was not about popularity, it was about the ability to actually act. It is why some historians call Cheney the last Cold War statesman, and others the first post-9/11 architect of American power. It is also why he remained, until his death today, one of the most polarizing figures in modern U.S. history. Historians still debate how to assess him. Was he the necessary realist America needed after 9/11, or the architect of an overpowered executive branch that defied constitutional restraint? A patriot protecting a country, or a strategist who rewrote the rules too far in the name of security? There is no clean answer, only legacy. And now after his death, surely to be examined and re-examined for years to come. Whether you admire Dick Cheney or condemned him, one thing is undeniable. He changed the office of the vice presidency forever. No one before him, not even Adams, not Johnson, not even the activist vice presidents of the 20th century, wielded so much authority or shaped so much policy from the second seat of power. Dick Cheney, a truly historical figure. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to check out today's regularly scheduled episode. For answers to questions, sources for today's episode, to leave a comment, or check out upcoming guest announcements, visit www.historyshortspodcast.com or look for History Shorts on Facebook, Patreon, and X.